Hi, and welcome to Open, the show that opens the Bronx and the rest of the world to you. I'm Kevin Aline, and today we'll update you on what's happening in and around our borough. Coming up, a recent Fidelity investment study reveals younger generations are concerned about unexpected healthcare costs, while boomers remain focused on healthcare costs and retirement. The VP for Financial Consultant at Fidelity Investment joins us later to share more about this report. Then, World Mental Health Day was celebrated last week on October 10th, and this year's theme is all about how mental health is a universal human right. A New York State licensed clinical social worker, also known as a self-care mentor, joins us to share more. After that, we look at an interview with a clinical assistant professor for Psychiatry Research Institute at Montefiore Einstein to discuss why death by suicide is at an all-time high. And finally, the annual Making Strides Against Breast Cancer in Brooklyn and the Bronx is a celebration of courage and hope and a movement that unites communities to end breast cancer as we know it for everyone. The development manager for the American Cancer Society gives us all the details. So stay tuned, all this and much more is headed your way because we're now officially open. Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin Aline, and today is Tuesday, October 17th. You are now watching Open, a program that brings the Bronx and New York City straight to you. Don't forget to stay connected with us via social media at BronxNet TV. A recent study by Fidelity Investments revealed younger generations and older generations have very different concerns regarding healthcare costs. However, all can agree that healthcare benefits are a top priority when it comes to workplace benefits. Joining me to discuss the study is Ryan Victorian, the VP Financial Consultant for Fidelity Investments. Ryan, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Of course. Now, what is Fidelity's fall 2023 healthcare outlook?
Well, so that's a survey that we did just to take the pulse of Americans on how they're feeling about, annual enrollment and what their knowledge is about some of the specifics, like health savings accounts.
Now, can you talk about the study looking at the patterns between younger and older generations in regard to healthcare costs?
Yes, absolutely. And what we actually find that the cost of healthcare, with continuing to rise, we, know choosing that a health plan is really difficult for Americans. And in fact, more than half of the people in our survey say they feel overwhelmed, and discouraged when it comes to annual enrollment. And interestingly, while women and younger generations say they're more overwhelmed, older generations tend to feel discouraged about the process of choosing health benefits.
And how do those generations differ? What are younger generations more focused on, and what are older generations focused on?
Yeah, absolutely. So while everyone is focused on physical health, younger generations rank mental health as a bigger concern than older generations do. Versus our study found that 1 in 5 boomers say affording healthcare in retirement is a top concern, which makes total sense given that the average retiree could spend more than $150,000 on healthcare in retirement. And then when it comes to women, longevity always comes into play, which is why the average woman will spend even more than that in retirement. But the good news is that Americans are seeking help with their benefits decisions, including help from their employers, which we really love to see.
Now, what inspired your organization to actually explore this?
I think the more that we can understand how Americans are feeling and what is most important to them, the more that we can help employers and shape their benefits, and the more that we can try to help our clients and customers.
Now, it seems lately that both generations are very polarizing sides, right? It's just one generation's on the other end and then another generation's on the other end, but they both agree that workplace, health benefits at the workplace are very, very important. Why do you think we're seeing this commonality, even between these two very different generations?
Well, I think, like I said before, the rising cost of healthcare is really just a priority for everybody. And even if you're a little bit younger and you know that you've got those costs coming down, down the pike in retirement, or you're facing retirement right now, healthcare costs are a huge concern, whether it's now, later, along the way for you, your family, and everybody's got unique scenarios. But the commonality is that healthcare is expensive. So it's important to everybody.
Now, you mentioned this before, but I want to go into a little bit more detail about it. What is annual enrollment season, and why are so many, in specific, Gen Z uh, population is so overwhelmed about it?
Well, annual enrollment is that time of year where you can take a look at all of the benefits that are offered to you from your employer. And while I think it's a great time because you could see what's available, it's also overwhelming because sometimes you have so many benefits, it's hard to comb through. And you have to compare some things like different types of health plans that you can choose from. And in particular, Gen Z, this might be the first time they're coming across it. So it's a little bit difficult to try to understand. And there's a ton of jargon in the content that you're reading. So again, we always say just ask for help. Say, explain it to me in normal terms. But because it's their first time with Gen Z, it can be a little overwhelming.
Now, in regard to enrollment and healthcare costs, what are some common mistakes and misconceptions people have?
Yeah. So I think one of the common mistakes is that you assume that everything's the same from the year before. And so you say, I'm not even going to pay attention to my annual enrollment, or I'm not even going to do it. And I think it's actually a common misconception because sometimes you feel like nothing would change. But I think it's really, really important to lean in, even though it could feel overwhelming. We always say, knowledge is power. So the more that you know and the more that you can understand about your health plan, the better you might actually feel. And there might be newer benefits that come on every year that could help you or your family. So don't assume. That's probably the biggest misconception. Don't
Now,
assume it's all the same.
what are HSAs and how could they better assist Americans?
Yes. So simply put, an HSA is an account that you and your employer can put money into to help pay for healthcare costs. Now, this is available to you if you have what's called a high deductible plan. And what most people don't realize is that HSAs have several distinct federal tax advantages. And at Fidelity, we like to call this the triple tax advantage. So the first one is the money you put in, also known as your contributions, go in pre tax. The second one is you can use that account to pay for qualified medical costs tax free. And then the third is that you can also invest that money to potentially grow to use in the future. And all of that growth is also tax free, assuming it's used for those qualified medical expenses. But I also want you to remember this account is always yours. It's not tied to the job that you have, and your funds never expire. And HSAs are an important part of your overall financial plan. And we know there's a strong link between health and financial well being. And so our job is to help you figure out where it fits.
Now, how could parents or even schools better prepare kids and teens about healthcare, especially since we mentioned that, for a lot of people, it's the first time they're seeing this? So, what are some ways they can better prepare?
I think honestly, preparing the next generation for health benefits means you have to have a pretty decent understanding yourself. And so the more you can lean in, the more you can learn about it, talk to HR, talk to your colleagues at work, and you can go online and find some resources. So the more knowledge you have, the better you can prepare the next generation.
And I've also noticed that younger generations, and this is just from personal experience, and also just seeing younger generations are usually hesitant to save for the future in regard to healthcare. What are some benefits of beginning to save earlier in life?
Yeah, I think it's really common. I'm with you in seeing that trend, and I think it also goes back to one of those misconceptions is that, usually they say, "Well, oh my gosh, like an IRA or a 401k, if I put money in, I can't get at it until I'm, 59 or, 65 years old." When in reality, putting money into an HSA, you can use now for your healthcare expenses, and then also creating the habit for younger generations as well of the habit of saving, that muscle memory of saving for the future is just so important. And I have so many clients with, let's say, when they're 65, where they say, "Oh, had I just taken those little steps along the way back when I was 25, 35, 45, pick the age, I would have been in a more comfortable place in retirement." So just understanding what's available and just knowing that it's okay to ask for help and understand that saving for your future is just as important as saving for now, especially when it comes to an HSA, which you can use right away.
Thank you so much for clarifying that. Because, yeah, that's something that I feel people even debate about, like, oh, I don't need to do this now. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, how can organizations like Fidelity Investments be a lifesaver for both older and younger generations?
Yeah. So what I always say is it doesn't matter what age you are. It doesn't matter where you are in your financial journey or your health journey. Of course, we are here to help. There's resources for everybody. If you're just getting started, you can invest with $1. And if you are a little bit more, further in your career and you're approaching retirement, and so, you've established a little bit more of a complex picture than when you're just getting started and you need some sort of deeper help, we're here for them as well. So, you can't be too young or too old or, for Fidelity in general, we're here to help everybody.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us and having this very important conversation for all generations.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
To find out more about this study, please go to their website at www.fidelity.com. Don't go away, we'll be back right after this.
Even though we didn't grow up together, he's my favorite brother.
Hey, sis.
I'm the baby of the family, and he's the gentle giant.
What you know about Port Georgia?
Man, please, that's a classic.
You know when they say people are a rare breed? Yeah, he's that.
I'm sorry, I'll be back in a few hours.
Don't worry, Shug. You know I'm for you.
I know.
Go get the football.
That was my favorite memory. He was always for ya. This is a true story of me, Bridget Floyd, and this guy, George Perry Floyd Jr., my big brother.
You're not going to get it all right. Just make sure you nail the big stuff,
Mama!
like making sure your kids are in the right seat for their age and size. Get it right at nhtsa.gov/the right seat.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl. It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
Welcome back. On October 10th, Global Mental Health Day was recognized worldwide to increase awareness of the difficulties associated with mental health. I am joined by Dominique Robinson, a licensed clinical social worker based in New York City, who will discuss the mental health therapy she offers and the safe space she created to promote self-care and mental health without shame. Thank you so much for joining me.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Now, can you give us some background on your experience as a licensed clinical social worker and therapist in New York City?
Absolutely. So I actually got like a big start here at Lehman College. I graduated from
Wow,
Lehman
cool.
with my bachelor's in social work degree, and then I moved on to Silverman School of Social Work at Hunter College, where I got my master's in social work. I started with field studies in the education world, where I served children with disabilities and children who had special needs and mental health needs. After that, I moved on to community-based organizations like domestic violence shelters, where I primarily worked with women of color and their children to find safety, stability, a sense of self-worth, also find joy and happiness again. Then after that, I started diving into the mental health world, where I worked in a community-based organization serving clients of the Bronx who were seeking mental health treatment. That's where I polished a lot of my skills and actually developed my own clinical practice, where I now serve as a therapist providing clinical therapy to residents of the New York State.
Now, I want to talk about some of the people that you worked with. You kind of gave us a little bit of a rundown, which is
Yeah.
amazing. Like you worked with so many different communities. I understand a huge part of your work. You talked about women of color, but I want to focus it more on like Black mental health, especially for women. What was the significance of kind of like delving into that? And if it is more women of color, that's also amazing. So can you just talk about that experience and what inspired you to kind of focus on that?
Yeah. Well, as a woman of color, in my own experience when I was looking for mental health services, I found out it was hard to find those services. They existed, but they're not necessarily, if you're living in like a Bronx community, they're not necessarily marketed in your community. So if you knew where to look, you kind of knew how to like retrieve those services. But if you didn't know and you never been exposed, it was hard for you to find it. So I found that I can also provide services in this space. And then the women that I was working with and the families I was working with were also complaining of the same thing. They would go to help and go look for help, but when they would receive the help, they felt that people didn't understand them or the services wasn't quite for them.
I can understand. And there's like sometimes a disconnect, which is like really important to kind of like notice. And I want to talk about, would you say this is part of the reason why there is a need to kind of focus on that? Because I know sometimes people think, mental health is for everybody and like everyone needs help. But why may you say like, no, we should kind of look into these communities and see how they differ?
Yeah, I definitely think mental health is for everyone. Everybody has mental health, so mental health care is definitely for everyone. But I think focusing on people of color allows us to really serve the need that they have. When we talk about like racial disparities, even health disparities, if we look at the Bronx and the Bronx's health disparities, people of color, people in poverty, people need assistance and they need assistance that's in a way that works for them.
Now, last week was World Mental Health Day. What is the significance of acknowledging this on a global scale?
Yeah. So last week was World Mental Health Day, and the theme for this year was every human being deserves mental health. Mental health is a human right. It's a universal human right. I think that on a global scale, it allows us to have these conversations. So what I'll see on TV, what I'll see on social media is these conversations happening. And for some people, this is the first time they're actually hearing a lot about this. This is the first time they may be sharing a post about mental health. So it really opens the conversation and it provides access to the conversation to people who we might not normally be able to target.
Right. And I also want to add that I think that we're so like lucky to be in a time where it's okay to talk about these things because I
Yeah.
know for a very long time, it wasn't. So, can you just talk about the importance of that? And then also what does supporting mental health and being open about this look like?
Yeah. When we talk about mental health, we decrease the stigma. If I'm able to share that I had a therapist or I have a therapist, I make it easier for somebody who looks like me or somebody who's from where I'm from to feel like, okay, maybe I can try it. They might have questions that they're feeling okay and comfortable to ask because the conversation is open.
Now, I really want to talk about the self-care mentor.
Mhm.
That's like basically your project that you kind of like built. So can you talk a little bit more about that and basically how it started?
Yeah. So maybe about 6 years ago, I think it was 2017, I found myself wanting to really work on my wellness and I wasn't quite ready to explore therapy yet, but I wanted to do things to help myself. So I started looking into mental health. I started researching self-care. And as I began to learn and I was like healing in some ways, I began to blog about it. So I would share like just things that I learned, share things that I was doing. And even when I entered therapy, I was just sharing. So many people started to come to me online about what is this? How can you recommend? Can we do it together? And so I literally became a mentor. And that's when I developed the brand, The Self-Care Mentor. So it's really for people who want to begin wellness and they want to begin to heal, but maybe they can't afford therapy yet, but they want to do something on a smaller scale. Or maybe they don't quite believe in it yet. Maybe therapy seems scary, so they want to do activities that they can access from home or from their community.
Now, how does your organization promote wellness and self care?
Yeah. So we do a lot of workshops. That's mainly what we do. And besides workshops, we do a lot of promotion on social media. I also create merchandise that people can buy that helps spread the word. It decreases stigma and things that they can use in their home. Also like feel good things too, things that they're proud to have. They actually like love to share and promote themselves. But we do a lot of workshops. That's mainly the way that we spread the information.
And can you talk about some of those workshops and like what people can expect when they interact?
Absolutely. So some of the workshops that I do range from literally learning about self-care. So like one of my favorites is like Self-Care 101, and it's talking about like the definition of self-care. What is self-care? Besides that, there's workshops I do where we actually practice self-care. So we might have journaling workshops, vision board workshops. I've had workshops with children, workshops with couples on self-care and how couples could practice self-care together.
Now, I'm so glad that you brought up children because we recently had a segment where we discussed the possibility of basically children having mental health days because we talk about mental health for adults, but sometimes I guess it just naturally happens. Sometimes you forget that children are also dealing with, mental health issues.
Yeah.
So can you talk about that? And then, how could this benefit also like children of color?
Yeah. So I also work as a school social worker. As a school social worker, I'm around nothing but children all day. And children's mental health is a thing. It actually exists. And sometimes we think children are in the background. They might not be feeling what we're feeling or experiencing what we're experiencing, but they are. Oftentimes on a bigger scale because they don't have much control of a lot of their situations. So children's mental health is really important. Also, the adults at this time that might be struggling with their mental health, maybe they struggled as a child with their mental health as well. So it's good and it's important to teach children about their mental health and help them prioritize and help them do things that can help them cope in the future.
Now, because kids are like kind of included in this world, which I think is amazing. I think it is good to like include children.
Absolutely.
How like strong that is to have these community-based events. Like how does that strengthen the community?
So community-based events are really important because the community is where the people are. The community is where my people are. So in order for me to be able to like access the people, I have to be able to go into the community and service them where they are. And then it also services children as well.
Now, I also want to talk about something a little bit fun because what I like that you do is that you kind of bring some like life into it. It doesn't have to feel like super reflective all the time. I understand that you have like charms for Crocs, which is like kind of fun. Can you talk about like how you actually like kind of got that part kind of like into your work?
Yeah. So a lot of the work that I do is creating conversation. And in order to create conversation, we have to like decrease the stigma and just normalize it. So Crocs was a big thing and still a big thing where people are wearing Crocs and they're collecting Croc charms. So I had looked for Croc charms that reflected like mental health and promoted mental health, but didn't find any. So I actually created Croc charms and sold Croc charms based off Black mental health, self-care. So people would purchase several of them for themselves, for their friends and family, even for like their coworkers or staff, and they would provide it to them and they would wear it on their Crocs. So they were rocking mental health, not just like on a t-shirt, which I also provide, but on their Crocs.
And why was it important to you to kind of like bring that like kind of, I don't want to say youthful energy, but like something that's fun, that makes people smile. Like, why was that important to like kind of have that be included in your work?
Right. So when I looked for Croc charms, I saw that there was Croc charms for like nurses and doctors and all these other spaces. You can rep where you were from. You can buy your flag. But why not rep that you prioritize mental health or that mental health matters to you? Our young people are wearing Crocs. Our older people are wearing Crocs. It's a thing. It's cool. So let's bring mental health into that same space and make it a conversation starter.
Now, what are some tips on searching for and finding the right health professional to assist, someone on their mental health journey?
Yeah, it really depends on the person that you're trying to talk to. Sometimes we're not the right person to approach someone, and maybe we need to reflect on that and find that person. It might be another family member or another friend. If it is you, you want to approach the person, but of course with like love and compassion. You also want to be patient, knowing that nothing is going to change overnight. And sometimes the first time you approach somebody about something, they might not take heed, or maybe they did, but they might not have made a change. But if you be patient, you might see some change. You also want to remember that your story story is not theirs and that everybody has their own story. So I would just approach them with confidence, at the same time, patience, and at the same time, maybe some resources. So if they are ready to change, there's something that you can provide them, like a website, a link, or something similar.
And then what can people do if they, like you mentioned, they want to find somebody who kind of shares the same community with them
Right.
while they kind of go on their mental health journey?
Yeah. So if you want to find somebody that shares a similar community to you, I think right now social media is a lot of the space where people look for things. So besides like doing a Google search, which is definitely important, and you can do that as well, you can also look on social media. There are a lot of therapists who are targeting the communities that use social media, especially our young people. You can also ask a friend. Therapists love referrals and they love when their name is shared. So your friend might have a great therapist, or your friend's friend might have a great therapist. Ask around. Your job, if you have health insurance, might be able to provide you with a listing. Your health insurance might be able to provide you with a listing of therapists that take your insurance. A lot of times now on therapy listings, you can have like a filter where you say, I want somebody in this area, of this community, of this religion, or whatever.
Well, Dominique, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really
Absolutely.
important conversation. And I really loved, just the ways that you kind of make it like feel like a little bit new and like you said, just normalized. Like it's just a
Absolutely.
normal situation. So I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
To learn more about Dominique and the work she does, please go to her website at www.theselfcarementor.com. Stay tuned. We have more open for you right after this.
Somehow I lost all those years. Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here. Or how did I get here?
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Welcome back. According to the latest CDC data, more than 49,000 people died by suicide in the US, the highest number since the dawn of World War II. Suicide is a complex issue with many drivers, but attempts involving guns end in death far more often. Increasing gun sales mean that firearms exist in the homes more and more. Additionally, the suicide rate among males in 2021 was approximately 4 times higher than the rate among females. We would like to take this time to revisit an interview with Dr. Peter J. Franz, a clinical assistant professor for Psychiatry Research Institute at Montefiore Einstein, to discuss why death by suicide is at an all-time high. Now, as I mentioned, according to CDC data, more than 49,000 people died by suicide in the US this year. This doesn't include the people who may have attempted or even thought about suicide, so this is obviously a very alarming number. Can you just explain why we may be seeing this increase?
Yeah, it is a really alarming number, and it does appear that suicide may have been on the rise for about the last 20 years. But one reason we might be seeing that is because suicide's actually decreased for the 20 years prior to that. One thing that I think is alarming and interesting is the fact that in 2019, the suicide rate was effectively equivalent to what it was in 1919, suggesting that suicide hasn't really changed all that much over time. And compared to many of the other leading causes of death that have shown really big reductions, suicide hasn't really budged. And that's a problem that we need to think about carefully. We need to investigate it further and find better ways to help people who are struggling.
Now, as we, recently had a topic about mental health and young children and teenagers and even young adults, what does the latest data say about this demographic of young people?
So these kinds of problems are particularly concerning in young people. For one, especially in the mid to later teenage years, this is the time frame when suicide thoughts tend to begin, when people first start experiencing those types of challenges. And this may be due to many of the challenges that you and I both encountered as teenagers. It's the beginning of starting life outside of your nuclear family, where you begin to have romantic relationships, start to think about what the world might be like as an adult, and starting to take on some of those adult roles. And with that comes stress. It's really, really hard to navigate adolescence for anyone. And for some people, they may need a lot of extra support. And so being able to identify when a youth is struggling is likely key to preventing the onset of suicidal thoughts.
And I also want to expand on that because I think when you're an adult, maybe you could take a little bit more charge of your life, or you can monitor yourself more. But when you're a young person, you may be going through something and not even know it. So can you possibly speak to that on just how that age difference, how we see that play out in that age group?
Sure. Young people have less experience going through the world, and they have less experience relative to old people with themselves. And the signs and signals that we might be struggling can be subtle. They can be as much as a small change in our sleeping or eating habits. They might be reductions in activities that we typically enjoy. They might also be reaching out to our friends less. And these things might not be dramatic differences. It might be small incremental changes on a daily basis. And that's something that as we get older, we should start to really look inward and monitor as signs and signals that we might need help.
Now, the CDC classifies deaths by suicide and suicide attempts as a severe public health challenge. What should our audience know about suicidal thoughts and the impact of losing someone to suicide?
So, suicide is a major public health crisis. It's the 10th leading cause of death overall, and it's the second leading cause of death among individuals 14 to 44. Now, because of how common this is, it's something that might be going on around us that we don't even know about. Someone might be struggling and we're unaware because they haven't told us. And so it's important to ask other people if they're struggling. But also in terms of someone who's lost a person to suicide, a loved one, we might call a survivor of suicide loss, these are people who are likely to be struggling as well. It can be really, really hard to have lost someone in any fashion, but suicide is particularly challenging because suicide is a stigmatized act, and the person who loved the individual who was lost may experience that stigma as well and may have difficulty reaching out for help.
Now, on a smaller scale, are there certain risk factors that makes a person more vulnerable to suicidal thoughts or death by suicide?
We know there are a lot of pretty big risk factors. So these include serious mental health concerns. These include hopelessness and feelings of social isolation. They also include prior suicidal thoughts and behaviors. And so those types of risk factors, coupled with especially stressful life events like the loss of a loved one, loss of a job, for example, when we notice these things happening with others around us, it's a time that we should reach out to them, to offer support, to be kind and to be caring, and to ask how they're doing.
And I also think that I know a lot of people talk about this, especially young people, like when they want to be left alone, they want to be left alone. How, as a person who may be struggling, how do you accept that? And, what should you think about if somebody is trying to help you?
So it can be very hard to accept help, because accepting help means acknowledging that a problem is going on. And because mental health problems are hard to talk about, they are in many ways stigmatized, and they can be embarrassing or shameful to a person experiencing them. And that's one of the reasons I think it's particularly important for people in your close social circle, your friends and your family, to check in regularly to see how they're doing, even in times that you're not concerned about a crisis. That way they know they can trust you, they know you care, and they know these are the kinds of things they can talk about.
Now, according to the CDC, boys and men were 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. Males make up 50% of the population, but nearly 80% of suicides. What could be contributing for us to see that?
There's likely a large number of factors that are contributing to the substantially higher number of suicides that we see in men. One big one might be firearms. Firearms are the cause of suicide death about 6 times more for men than they are for women, and that's a statistic that we see across the globe. And so it suggests that firearms, which are a highly lethal means of attempting suicide, may be playing a specific role for men and their suicide deaths.
Are there bigger trends in our country or culture that could be influencing these rates? I know a lot of people think social media could be influencing or exposure to certain things. In your research or in your study, have you noticed anything like that?
So on one hand, I think that one of the important factors, and something that I think just as this conversation is demonstrating, is that an increase in public awareness of the problem of suicide, how to detect or identify it, and how to help people is really important. And I do think that's increasing. So in that respect, we're really going in the right direction. But I also think when we talk about social media, we can consider the fact that virtually all young people are engaged in some form of social media on a daily basis. And there are lots of places on the internet where people might go that could be harmful, that could impact their mental health in a negative way. But we're also starting to realize that there are places on the internet that can be wonderful places where they can find support from peers and from other types of resources. And so one of the keys that we're looking into is how we can guide individuals to find that kind of supportive resource online.
Now, if we're worried about a friend or a loved one, what should we be on the lookout for?
The big things that we should probably be looking out for are changes in their normal behavior that suggest they're not doing so well. So just like I was talking about before, people who are not engaging with others in the same way that they typically do, who aren't enjoying the activities that they often do. But our experiences, our emotional lives are private. And without asking, it's hard to know what someone else is feeling. And so I think that the big thing we should be aware of is that it's important to be checking in with someone, that if you have a sense that they might not be doing well, ask them. And if you have the sense that there's a possibility they might be contemplating hurting themselves, ask that too.
Oh, wow. So, I think that's very shocking to hear because and maybe this is something as a society that we can move and evolve. But to be so forward, what are the pros of that? Or, why would you encourage that? I know that could be very hard for somebody to do.
Definitely. It may be an uncomfortable question to ask or conversation to have with an individual. But if you have reason to believe that someone's struggling or they may be at risk for suicide, one way to demonstrate care and support for that person is to ask them about that experience, to ask them what's going on for them. And it's also the only way that we could start to provide the kind of help they may need, including suggesting resources for them or simply being there as their friend, as someone who cares.
And I also want to bring up support groups. Can you just tell us a little bit about just why those may also be another outlet for people who may be struggling?
So support groups can be really critical. I think the biggest reason that many support groups might help people, especially those who are struggling with suicide, is that many people experience suicidal thoughts or suicidal acts in private. They don't share them with others. And that by recognizing that other people go through similar things can be intensely therapeutic. It can be the realization that I'm not the only one experiencing this. And our research and that by many others suggests that that can be really important for helping people to recover. But it also can be helpful therapeutic groups in terms of helping people build a social network where they can get support, where they can meet other people and engage in the kind of social activities that we know is helpful for mental health generally.
Now, what are some treatments for depression and complex mental illness that can help?
Well, there are many. And over time, we've developed lots of different types of treatments. These can be ranging from talk therapy, where individuals process the challenges they experience in their life by talking about them with a supportive therapist of some kind. They may also be the kind where people start to build skills to help them identify the types of challenges they're experiencing and ways that they can cope with them. And there are, of course, also medications that people can take. I think the really important thing for people to recognize about mental health treatment is that when they're struggling, there is a treatment out there for them. And that working with a provider, you can identify what's going to work for you, what's going to be the most comfortable, and what's going to help.
And what is something that we can all do to, because stigma is a really big, although we are evolving and we're growing so much, stigma is still, around. What can we all do to make sure that no one feels embarrassed or, is hesitant to talk about this?
I think we can do exactly what you and I are doing today, which is to talk about mental health, to talk about suicide, to acknowledge that this is a problem that lots and lots of people experience, and to identify that there's lots of ways that people can get help, and that getting help for mental health concerns is as important as getting help for anything else. And so I think talking about this and identifying that there are lots of resources out there might really help to reduce stigma and increase the extent to which people feel like they can ask for help.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. I think this is something that we need to talk about more, and I'm happy that we can talk about it, especially in this community. I know a lot of communities tend to struggle based on your culture. They can struggle with talking about mental health. So I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us about this.
It's my pleasure. Thanks so much for having me.
If you or someone you may know may be in a crisis, please go to the website www.afsp.org or call or text 988 or text TALK to 741-741.
Thank you again to Dr. Peter J. Franz for joining us to speak about such a sensitive but much needed conversation. We have to take a quick break. We'll be back with more right after this.
Dear moms and dads, what you have achieved here today is going to help us and our futures. It is why we are coming up on stage to collect your diplomas.
You know it's true.
Mom, we love you always.
Everything I do.
When you graduate, they graduate. Visit finishyourdiploma.org to find free and supportive adult education centers near you.
Where did the time go? I don't know how I got here.
You've done the hard part. You quit smoking. Now do the easy part and get scanned for lung cancer. If you smoked, you may still be at risk, but early detection could save your life. Talk to your doctor and learn more at savedbythescan.org.
Most hiring algorithms would scream me out.
Some bosses couldn't see me as a leader.
I've run this place for 20 years, but I still need to prove that I'm more than what you see on paper.
I've been running code as long as I've been able to reach a keyboard.
This is what I do. It's second nature for me, coordinating 100 details at once.
It's the way my mind works. I have a very mechanical brain.
I sold them on my skills.
You gotta be so good that you can coordinate.
My magic is
analytics and empathy. That's how getting clients. You have to have the confidence in yourself to show up and defy the odds.
I am more than who I am on paper.
I never got a college degree. And today, I'm the CEO of my own company. People want to tell me I'm one in a million, when actually I'm one of millions. The stars are all around us. It's time for them to shine.
Found my heart out there in the open. Trees make you feel small. Can't help but get lost again.
Feel the beat of nature at a park or forest near you. Find a forest and music inspired by nature at discovertheforest.org.
Welcome back. During the month of October, healthcare professionals all over the country are raising awareness for breast cancer. The American Cancer Society, breast cancer survivors, sponsors, and community supporters will be participating in the annual Making Strides Against Breast Cancer event to show their support. Before we meet the guests, let's take a look at this trailer for their upcoming event.
This is American Cancer Society making strides against breast cancer. It's go mode time. Get ready to make some amazing strides. Since 1993, we've become the most impactful, the largest, the #1 breast cancer movement in the country. We are the movement, the hope, the future. For over 30 years, we've been celebrating the courage of survivors and thrivers. There are more than 3.8 million breast cancer survivors in the U.S. today. So we continue to unite communities across the nation to end breast cancer as we know it for everyone. But there are still more steps to take. Over 280,000 people were diagnosed in 2022. Now the shoe is on your foot. Ready, set, go. Be the movement. Sign up for the walk. Be the hope. Support a survivor. Be the future. Donate to help end breast cancer. Every sponsor, partner, and person moves us one step closer to ending breast cancer as we know it. Go Mode activated. Sign up today.
Claire Francis, the development manager for the American Cancer Society, joins me to talk about the event. Claire, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Now, breast cancer is one of the most common cancers for women in the United States. Why is it so important to get people educated about early detection?
So, the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer movement is a celebration of courage and hope, and it's a movement uniting communities to end breast cancer as we know it. So, in order to do that, we bring awareness to early detection. So we collaborate with some of our healthcare companies, with our communities, with individuals, our survivors, our thrivers, their caregivers, in providing that educational awareness to be consistent with their cancer screenings, with their health checkups, so that early detection, when you have early detection, it will help with the treatment of if you're diagnosed with cancer.
Now, you talked about making strides against breast cancer. Can you just talk about your experience with it and, basically give us a little bit more information about it, like how it started and, how does it affect the community?
So like I mentioned, it's a big old celebration of courage and hope. So it's been like over 2 decades. It's about like a 3 to 5 non-competitive walk where we all gather together as a community to show community support to our survivors, our thrivers. Our survivors are breast cancer survivors. Our thrivers are those with metastatic breast cancer, their families, and even caregivers. So we're showing that supportive community support to let them know that we are here for you, and we're celebrating each life and each memory and decreasing those breast cancer diagnosis numbers.
Now, I really love that you said it's non-competitive, so that means it's for everyone.
Yes.
Everyone can join. What is the overall goal when organizing these walk events?
Celebration. It's just a celebration where the whole community comes together to let our breast cancer, like I mentioned, survivor thrivers know that we are here for them. Year round, our teams, our companies are doing their funding to show help in providing those resources that the American Cancer Society does through research and through advocacy, with providing programs through health equity, research and providing grants to scientists to help bring forth new interventions and treatments with cancer. So it's just that collective unity of letting everyone know that you are not alone in this journey.
Now, how has the event just grown over the years? Just looking at the trailer, you can see there's so many people there, and you definitely get that sense of celebration. So how has the movement just grown in regard to raising awareness and support?
So this has been happening since 1993. So we call it like we are the hope. So the goal is to pretty much end breast cancer as we know it. So it all started with one breast cancer survivor named Margie. She joined up with other breast cancer survivors, and they created what's called a Move Along-thon. And it has grown so much where they now in 1993, it officially became the American Cancer Society Making Strides Against Breast Cancer movement.
Now, were you going to say something else?
No.
Or to add it to? Okay. Now, I wanted to know more about the fundraising events. Can you talk about that and, what impact it had on spreading awareness and supporting breast cancer research?
So our teams and our companies, so we have companies that have teams that do fundraising. So all the fundraising, all the funds goes to the overall mission and vision of the American Cancer Society, of the American Cancer Society, like I mentioned, with funding our research and our advocacy, which will help provide those programs and treatments to, again, end that decrease in hearing you have cancer, to where more families will have more memories with their family members.
Now, something that's really important that I want to highlight is that there's not only support for breast cancer patients, but also for caregivers, which I think is just so important. Can you talk about, why the organization also honors caregivers and celebrates people who are taking care of those who are dealing with breast cancer?
So I'll put my personal twist on that because I was also a caregiver as well, alongside of being a health professional at the same time before starting with the American Cancer Society. So as a caregiver, you're definitely providing that 24/7 support to that person, not just physically, but also mentally. A lot of people who are going through their cancer journey, sometimes are going through it alone. So with our caregivers, they're providing that support all the time. They're like right there next to that survivor or thriver. So feeling celebrated, knowing that you're there with them is also a great way of knowing that, hey, I'm here with you and I have a support team behind me that's helping me support the person I'm supporting. So for me, knowing that there's other people behind me to help my mom or my grandfather through this journey, is a great, mental celebration for me, knowing that I'm not alone in helping this person.
And I also want to add, like, do you think that we should kind of normalize, like, having caregivers, like, be kind of recognized in the space of healthcare? Because definitely it can't be done alone. Like, when, taking care of somebody, it is like a community effort. So can you just talk about a little bit, just because of your experience, is that something that, should be kind of looked at more often?
I think definitely that is correct. That we should get more in tune of celebrating caregivers along with the survivors and thrivers, because that it's a change of life for them as well. Because before that, that family member was independent, doing things on their own, and their cancer journey now has take a toll or twist on the entire family. So the caregiver has to make so many changes with their own personal life, with the home as well. So, it's good to know that there is someone to interact with. Like the American Cancer Society has that 24/7 hotline where not only does the survivor and the thriver have an opportunity to speak to someone, the caregiver does as well, because they also need that support or education on knowing how to continually take care of my family member in a healthy way. And also, how can I deal with mentally, physically, and emotionally how to take care of them as well.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Now, the upcoming event is coming. The celebration is coming. So, can you talk about the event in the Bronx and just give us a little bit more details about that?
Sure. So, the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer of the Bronx is not Saturdays, forgive me, Sunday, October 22nd. It starts at 8 a.m. and it's at Bay Plaza Shopping Center. So, we know, the Bronx is all about celebration, and all of our teams, our companies, our Bronx Executive Committee of the Bronx comes together in just an overall big party celebration and just fulfilling everything that we just talked about. Our survivors, our thrivers, our caregivers, the families, the individuals, the participants, we just all come together where year round, all these individuals took their part in fulfilling the mission and the vision of the American Cancer Society. So now we have come together collectively to just have a really big celebration.
Now, what can people do to make sure that they are able to actually participate in the celebration? So how do they register?
So they definitely have to go to the website is makingstrides.org/Bronx, or you can go to makingstrides.org and you can find the location that's nearest you of the upcoming walk. So Brooklyn's walk is coming up also on October 22nd. And this weekend is Queens and Central Park in Staten Island. So if you visit that website, you can register and find out more information about the Making Strides movement that's close to you.
Now, if people can't attend the event, what are some other ways that they can show their support?
They can go on there, register. They can fundraise if they can't attend the event. So again, like as I mentioned, those fundraising, those donations foundations is a great source of funding of helped us to continue to fulfill the movement that we do at the American Cancer Society.
Now, one way to help the Making Strides event is to become a team leader. What does it mean to become a team leader?
So the team leader, and I feel like everyone is a leader in their own individual way. There's no really title. I think leader is a leader, but the team leaders are the ones that really bring everyone together and saying, this may not affect me personally, or it can affect me personally, but let's come together to show others that we're there for them. And the team leader is the one that collectively just brings a whole unit together and say, let's spread the awareness, let's spread the education about the early detection, let's spread the awareness that what the American Cancer Society is doing with the funds that we are raising, and let's unite together in creating this aspect of love to the entire Bronx community.
And if someone's attending for the first time, what can they expect?
Just plain old fun and good times, and just creating a memorable experience, because life is just creating memories. So definitely at the Bronx Walk, there's a variety of different ways of creating that memorable experience, in allowing that family member to feel love, or creating or showing that memory of someone that they lost. There are many who have lost family members, so this is a great movement for them to take those steps in honoring the memory of that person. So hence making strides. So taking that strides to honor someone that they may have lost, or to honor the individual that has fought a great fight through this journey and still fighting strong, and that they're there with them.
Now, I want to thank you so much for joining us and having this really important conversation, but also kind of like, saying that it's a celebration, right? Because a lot of this stuff can just be very like mentally taxing on, so many people. And, it is tough. So to have organizations like yours that kind of like, make people feel excited to be around one another and kind of talk about this openly, I just think is so important. So thank you so much for joining us and having this conversation. I know the American Cancer Society does other work. Can you just quickly let people know about how can they find out about some of the other resources your organization offers?
So they can go to cancer.org. So if you want to find out more information about the various types of cancers, when to do your cancer screening, or you have a particular question about like colonoscopies, mammograms, we have an array of resource information at cancer.org. We even have a live chat where you can speak to someone through the live chat to answer any questions. And as I mentioned previously, we have our 1-800 24/7 number where you can call and get information. And one thing that I wanted to point it out that I didn't say before, that a lot of people are not aware of, is that breast cancer does affect men as well. So that resource information for men is also on the website for them to obtain information that breast cancer does affect men as well.
All right, well, thank you so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
me. Remember, the Making Strides Against Breast Cancer event will take place in the Bronx at the Bay Plaza Mall on October 22nd at 8 a.m. You can also find it in Brooklyn at the Coney Island Boardwalk and the Mamonades Park as well. And please go to their website, www.cancer.org, for more information. We've come to the end of our show today. I'd like to thank all of our guests for joining us, and you, the viewers, for tuning in. If you missed any part of today's show, you can catch the recable cast at 5 and 10 p.m. on Optimum Channel 67 and Verizon Files Channel 33, or watch anytime on the web at bronxnet.org. You can catch a brand new episode of Open with Darren Jaime on Wednesday and with Rena Valentine on Friday. I'm Kim and Aline, wishing you and yours safety and wellness now and always. See you next time.